whenever you move. I don't care if you kill him or not, just drive him out.
Fuck, 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 fuck.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Dude.
Hello, it is I, famous and acclaimed YouTuber, Will Smith, and this video was brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. What the fuck happened to this website, dude? Anyway, this is the 5-on-5 review of the Amoeba AM-013 from Aries, and no, it's totally not a honey badger clone because Aries doesn't want to get sued by AAC. Also, turns out this gun is now being sold as the Amoeba GEN5 M4 with a couple of minor upgrades that won't make a huge difference for the end user, so this review should still be applicable to the GEN5 as well. If you come across one in the wild, the easiest way to tell apart the GEN5 from the GEN3s and 4s is the GEN5's flat-face trigger. If you don't know how these reviews work, I list off the gun's basic info, or stats if you will, and talk about the 5 best things about it and the 5 worst things about it in alternating order, with a conclusion on whether or not I think it's worth buying. The overall length is 63 centimeters with the stock collapsed and 73.5 centimeters with the stock extended. The barrel length is 300 millimeters. It weighs in at 2.2 kilograms. The gearbox is version 2. The battery is housed in the stock and connects to the gearbox with small Tamiya connectors. The muzzle energy and the rate of fire are both variable. More on that in a minute. The pricing is a little all over the place depending on where you look, but it's in the ballpark at $300 US. At the time of this review, I've put around 30,000 rounds through it, and the modifications I've made to it consist of a G&G green hop-up bucking and a weaker spring. There's not a whole lot to say here. It's a quick change spring guide. Remove the stock, unscrew the battery compartment with a 3mm hex key, and then back out the spring guide with a 6mm. I didn't bother listing a muzzle energy or a rate of fire because assuming you have the tools, dropping in whatever spring you want is so stupidly easy that the stock spring basically doesn't matter. Also, I may have lost the original spring. That being said, I do remember that it was a little too hot for my field, so it was nice to be able to swap in a weaker spring and drop its muzzle energy down to 1.2 joules without needing to tear apart the gearbox. Speaking of which, opening and closing a gearbox is way faster and easier when you can remove the piston spring from the equation. That's not to say I've needed to replace anything inside the gearbox. It's actually held up flawlessly so far. The battery compartment on this thing sucks. It's really short, so you can't even fit common 7.4 LiPo stick pattern batteries in it. Brick-style LiPos meant for mock PEC boxes should fit, but apparently it can still be pretty cramped. You can buy an extension for the battery compartment, but buying extra doodads for a gun that already costs this much is stupid. So I used some Velcro strips to hold a 9.6 nunchuck in place.
Oh, there it is. There it is, everything.
It's a pretty hideous fix, so I doubt most people would consider doing it in the first place, but it's not like the compartment extension will let you collapse the stock anyway. Also, I noticed that the circuit will randomly go dead and won't come back until you unplug the battery and plug it back in, but that might be my fault with the Velcro.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were hostile. I'm fucking retarded.
Instead of the mechanical trigger contacts that you normally get in an AEG, this gun features Aries Electronic Fire Control System, or EFCS for short. It's their branded trigger MOSFET, and it basically makes this gun twice as smart as the average Rick and Morty fan. When you pull the trigger, it sends a signal to the EFCS to send power to the motor. The EFCS will keep powering the motor until a sensor is tripped by a neodymium magnet embedded in the sector gear that tells the EFCS to cut off power to the motor, thus completing a cycle. This is great for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it won't corrode and fry like standard contacts do when they have too much mileage on them. Secondly, you don't need to keep the trigger held down for the entire cycle in order for the gun to fire properly. As long as the trigger is pulled for at least a few milliseconds, the MOSFET will provide power to the motor until the sector gear completes a revolution. This means you can release the trigger immediately after pulling it and ready your trigger finger to squeeze off the next shot while the gun's still cycling, which means that you can shoot way faster on semi than you can with regular trigger contacts, even when your battery is running low.
Ready?
Bird, bird. There was nothing there. I was just flexing. He's
The length of pull is fine, but the butt plate itself is really small. Maybe I'm just clumsy or used to larger butt plates, but I found that bringing it up to a comfortable place on my shoulder is hard to do quickly. Either way, I took the detachable cheek rest that came with my G3 and taped it onto the butt plate to make for a much larger and more comfortable one.
Damn, boy!
But it looks so ugly.
Shut the fuck up. It was cheap, and there's no aftermarket butt plates for this thing anyway. Besides, if you care about looks so goddamn much, you should spend your weekends on a runway, not an airsoft field there, kiddo. The Handguard uses a proprietary mounting system for the rail sections that are included with the gun. You attach the rails to the Handguard with 1032 screws, which by the way can be found at most fastener stores if you need spares. There are holes drilled and tapped for these screws at the 130, 3, 430, 6, 730, 9, 1030, and 12 o'clock positions. Some may prefer M-Lock or Keymod. But this proprietary system grew on me because I didn't need to buy overpriced rail sections after I had already bought a gun. It doesn't come with a ton of rails, but it should be enough for most reasonable carbine setups. It also comes with a pair of these goofy hand stop things. I wanted to like them, but I tried using them in a bunch of different ways and nothing quite felt right. Hopefully it's just me. Aries has a habit of putting shit buckings in all of their guns, and this one is no exception. It's this translucent green thing that's made of a soft rubber that tears really easily and doesn't work that well. Now, is it expensive to replace a hop-up bucking? No. Swap it out for literally anything else and you'll be fine. Is it difficult to replace? No. Is it kind of insulting when you buy a gun in this price range and it comes with garbage parts? Hell yes. I would show an accuracy comparison between the stock bucking and literally anything else to put things into perspective, but the original doesn't even fit properly. Just look at this shit. I'm not wasting my time trying to stuff this into a hop-up unit. How'd they even put this shit together at the factory? Speaking of, the hop-up unit is actually pretty good. It's a rotary style, so making fine adjustments is super easy. The ejection port is kinda small, so you can't quite get at it with gloves on, but the wheel doesn't walk back due to gearbox vibrations like some cheaper rotary hop-ups do, so you don't need to mess with it very often. Don't you mean the upper receiver? Kinda. Alright, I have a bunch of little gripes and all of them involve the upper receiver or something else that attaches to it, so I'm putting them all together into one segment. First off, the upper itself is made of plastic. This means that when you grip the handguard with any amount of force, it flexes. The fact that the handguard itself is held in place by one tiny screw doesn't help either. While the barrel is supposed to be free-floated, the mock suppressor makes for such a small gap that the handguard makes contact and pushes against it most of the time. This makes receiver-mounted optics useless like they would be on a plastic upper AR with a non-free-floated barrel. Normally, I'd take the easy way out of a problem like this and use the iron sights, but the sights it comes with aren't adjustable at all, which is pretty goddamn pathetic considering the price tag, though you can make use of the front sight if you pair it with an M16 carrying handled rear sight. My solution to all of this was to attach a red dot to the top of the handguard and tighten down some spare rail screws at both ends of the handguard to hold the barrel, handguard, and barrel nut together as a rigid unit. The barrel still flexes at the base where it connects to the receiver, but now the red dot moves with it and holds zero like it should. I almost forgot to mention this, but the mock suppressor lacks any muzzle threads. Inconvenient, but not a deal breaker. I experimented with some 3D printed suppressors and amplifiers that replaced the end cap, both of which worked well. However, if you're a peasant and you don't have a 3D printer, you can buy a threaded end cap that has standard 14mm counterclockwise threads. The 300mm barrel and the PDW style stock give this gun an overall length that I would describe as Goldilocks-like. It's short enough to move easily through doorways and avoid getting snagged on branches, while also long enough to accommodate larger shooters and fit a practical amount of attachments without feeling cramped like a stubby AR does. Don't get me wrong, I can appreciate both long boys and stubby boys, but sometimes it's nice to have a jack of all trades. Look, I know ergonomics can be somewhat subjective since they depend on personal body mechanics to an extent, but it was this or I pretend to gush about the enlarged mag release or the flared mag well. Nice things to have, but not exactly riveting stuff for a video. Burst fire as a feature isn't a bad thing. I'm certain it's great, but I can't tell you myself because in order to program this gun for burst fire, I'd have to buy this stupid programming box thing for $60. I don't know if paying that much money for a proprietary tool that you'll only use a handful of times was considered a cool idea when this gun came out, but it's stupid now and I'm not going to bother with it. I'm really struggling to come up with a reason to actively seek one of these out. That is, unless you have some kind of honey badger fetish that's a result of sinking hundreds of hours into COD Modern Warfare. But if that is the case, why not buy the PDW-15 from G&G instead, because at least that has a metal receiver. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy I own this gun, but I'm also happy I didn't pay full price for it. And there's a bit of a story behind that. I was at a swap meet when I saw a guy had this gun on his table. It was still in the box new with all of its accessories, and he was selling it with a speed loader, 3 mid caps, a smart charger, and a rather puffy looking 11-1 LiPo. He was asking 400 Kanukistani fun bucks for all of this, which is typically what the gun alone sells for brand new. I don't remember what the hell I said to him, but I talked him down to $275. Go ahead and convert those prices into the currency of your choice. And maybe contemplate how sketchy this deal was, because I know I certainly forgot to do that at the time. After all of the janky modifications I made to it, I had a practical, reliable, no bullshit carbine that comes with me almost every time I play because if my other guns go down, I know I can count on it to work properly. The problem is that it's not hard to find other ARs that match that description at a similar price without the annoying quirks that require you to buy extra bits to remedy them.
Goddamn bullshit!
I say buy one if you find one used for cheap like I did or on sale at a considerable discount and use it as a nice beater gun. But it's not worth bothering with otherwise.
Contacting your tower, contacting your tower.